This is episode 70 of the 99 Forever podcast. I'm Eric Friesen, and joining me tonight to recap the Edmonton Oilers' series-clinching victory over the Los Angeles Kings in Game 6 and preview their second-round matchup against the Vegas Golden Knights are the co-hosts of Straight Off the Pipe with Dash and Dirsa, Mike Dashney and Mike Dirsa. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well. Excited about tomorrow.
Yeah, doing great.
That's great to hear. Finally, after having you guys both on the show multiple times, though, I get you on for the same episode.
We charge double for that.
Well, I'm expecting pretty good ratings then.
No guarantees. It depends if Dirsa and I get in a fight or not. That's generally what dictates our ratings.
Okay, well, hopefully I won't have too many leading questions that'll take you down that path. But before we break down Game 6 in LA, I'd just like to go back to the Oilers' 2006 Cup run, because yesterday was the 17th anniversary of the Oilers pulling off one of the biggest upsets in NHL history when they eliminated the President's Trophy winning Detroit Red Wings in 6 games. And of course, Ales Hemsky was the hero in Game 6, scoring the game-tying and series-winning goals in the third period. I first just want to ask either of you, did you have a chance to attend any games during that playoff run? And do you remember where you were or what the celebration was like when Hemsky scored that goal with just over a minute left on the clock? Dirsa, you can kick us off tonight.
Yeah. At that time, I had a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old son, and we played mini sticks in the living room and had the game on at the same time.
And Dash, were you at Rexall Place for any playoff games in 2006? And what are your memories of that Hemsky goal?
This podcast is going to be a while if that's the case. I think I told this story on one of your podcasts, to be honest, Eric. But it entered my name into a lottery back in that time to see if I could get playoff tickets. It was my first year. I had just moved to Edmonton that August. So it was my first opportunity to kind of take a stab at any type of, and I entered my name for the playoff lottery. Of course, we're in a decade of darkness, so the demand wasn't there like it is today, but my name was the second name drawn. So I had red line seats at Rexall, and I, for the most case, sold those games to be able to still afford to go and pay off my debt for buying them in the first place. But I only missed 2 games in that run.
Oh, wow.
And one of them, unfortunately, was Game 6 because I had a work commitment in Kelowna. But my family there is diehard Oilers fans. So we watched it on that couch. So I remember exactly where I was. I remember the address. I remember the couch I was sitting on. But more vividly, I remember a lot of things from that playoff run. Potentially the most memorable being after the San Jose victory, me still holding my Chi-Chu whoop-de-doo sign and being carried on a table, like a picnic table, like a chariot outside of Rexall Place. I stood on the table so everybody could see, and then a bunch of people just picked the table up and started walking with it. It was pretty epic.
It's too bad that social media wasn't bigger then. We would have got some great videos or pictures out of that.
That would have went viral.
And then what? You headed across the street to the Coliseum Inn Lounge?
I'm not sure the chariot made it that far, but
No.
but it was probably off to the LRT and to chant until our lungs couldn't anymore.
Oh, that's great. And Mike, have you ever been to an Oilers playoff game? Or sorry, Dirsa, I should say, because you're both named Mike.
So the last Oiler playoff game I went to, my son, who's now 23, was just under a year old, and the Oilers were playing the Stars, and we spent all day making a sign that said Medano, welcome to chaos, because he had an article saying it was going to be chaos in Edmonton for the playoff game. So that's the last playoff game I'd been to. I've been to probably about a dozen or so playoff games in my existence, I guess.
Nice. So that would have been late 90s when they were going up against the Stars every year in the playoffs.
Well, this one I think was in 2001 because my oldest son is 23 and he was born in 2000. So I think it was probably around April of 2001. He wasn't quite a year old, but pretty close.
Well, yeah, 6 out of 7 years between 97 and 03, they met in the playoffs. So, I mean, who knows? We could be seeing, for the first time in 20 years, Edmonton and Dallas meeting this year again.
Yeah, it sort of has that feeling. Before then, the last game before that was against Dallas too, and I remember I was in standing room only, and I believe it was Game 6 in Edmonton. And by the end of the second period, I couldn't drink beer anymore because I couldn't stand. And I think that game was the one that went into multiple overtimes, and I think it was Bookberger scored to win it, and then we went to Dallas for Game 7, and I think that's the one where Todd Marchand finally scored on a breakaway.
Yeah, it was just the anniversary of that goal the other night too. I think it was actually the night that Edmonton wrapped up the series against LA was the 26th anniversary.
Yeah, so I've kind of seen the Oilers Dallas, a few times. I was at the game too where Theo Fleury did his shit on the ice when we lost, and then Esatika and returned the favor in Calgary in Game 7 of that series too. So,
yeah, for sure.
I've seen some heartaches and some big victories, and yeah, lots of fun.
Well, hopefully we're going to have a lot more great memories to come this spring. And let's get into Game 6 now. And the Oilers came into this game with a 3-2 series lead, and we're looking to close it out on the road. Connor McDavid opened the scoring less than 2 minutes into the game. Leon Draisaitl tallied his league-leading 7th goal of the playoffs, and Klim Kostin buried a pair for Edmonton, who held 3-1 and 4-3 leads in the second period. However, the Kings got a gift when Skinner tried to play the puck and gave it right to Phillip Danault, who put it in the net for a shorthanded goal to tie the game 4-4. But then with just over 3 minutes left on the clock, Tyler Yamamoto scored the series deciding goal to lift the Oilers to a 5-4 win at Crypto.com Arena on Saturday night. And with the victory, the Oilers advanced to the second round of the playoffs in consecutive years for the first time since 1997 and 98. They also extended their unbeaten streak in regulation to a franchise record 21 games. Dash, Yamamoto couldn't have picked a better time to score the biggest goal of his career, could he?
Oh, no doubt about it. No, I mean, simple answer, no.
Could you just go into it, looking back at that game? I mean, what can you say about it after kind of struggling through the series to finally have that breakthrough moment?
He certainly had his contributions to the games. I know there was a demotion and started playing lower minutes and on a lower line. So, it's just nice to see that, if he was going to come through and get off the schneid, that it's the most important goal of the series and the series clinching goal. To be able to contribute the way Yamamoto does on a regular basis, whether it's generating the cycle, digging pucks out of the corners, just having an active stick and creating chaos, to use Dirsa's kid's term there. It's nice to have it pay off on the score sheet, because I don't think he gets enough credit for what he does in the game. So to be able to get, a score sheet he can frame and put on his wall is a great reward.
And of course, he had that 20-goal season last year, and then due to some injuries, he didn't have the year that he would have liked to this past season. But I think that after sort of struggling through a large chunk to finally, have that signature goal in his career where he played a part in such a big victory, it's just that has to be one that he'll remember forever.
No doubt. I mean, and the injury struggles were a part of the season. In writing that story, I believe, there was a concussion suffered early, and I like Woodcroft keeps his lips tight when it comes to those types of things, but I think we all saw the signs of him struggling through that for a lot of the season. Whether that's still happening and this was just a timely goal at a timely time, or if it was, him getting through it and seeing through the fog. Let's hope it's the latter.
Yeah, I mean, especially you think back to that run he had 3 years ago where he put up 26 points in 27 games after getting recalled from Bakersfield. You'd love to think that he'll get back to that point at some time in his career. And I think that this is probably the most impactful moment he's had with the Oilers since that run, obviously. Dirsa, Yamamoto didn't have a point through the first 5 games of the series, but he picked up an assist on Klim Kostin's second goal of the night and then scored one of Edmonton's biggest playoff goals in recent memory. What can you say about his performance in Game 6?
Better late than never. I think like a lot of credit, and I think it gets lost because people just love to dog the guy. But I think a lot of credit for that goal needs to go to Darnell Nurse for real confident zone exit and zone entry, and a pretty world class deke he made, and feathered a pass across that probably should have ended it there, but it didn't, and the Oilers kind of held the zone, and that gave kind of Yamamoto his opportunity to make that shot that he put just underneath the bar on the left corner there, beating Korpisalo, and ended up deciding the game. But Nurse did a lot of heavy lifting on that whole sequence, and showed a lot of confidence on that whole play. So Yamamoto, for most people, is the first star on the night, but there was another guy that really contributed to that whole sequence.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Yamamoto also deserves credit for last year too. If you remember, he's the one who chipped the puck into open ice and let McDavid just sort of skate into it, which ultimately led to the insurance marker in Game 7 at Rogers Place. And that's 2 years in a row now where he's played a part in the closing out of the divisional rivals in the first round. Sticking with secondary scoring options, though, Klim Kostin was also excellent in Game 6. He finished the night with 2 goals, 3 points, and a +3 rating in just 8 minutes and 44 seconds of ice time. Dirsa, Kostin appeared to regain his offensive confidence from earlier in the season during the series, but did you think it was just a matter of time for him to start scoring again? And do you expect that head coach Jay Woodcroft will find him more ice time going forward?
It's almost like you listened to Michael's show, because he kind of asked us who our X factors were going to be.
Well, I did catch some of that
in this Vegas series, and I went with Klim Kostin. It's almost like he's unlocked a new skill. If you're playing video games, you add something to your repertoire, where I think he's really found the ability to put pucks through D-man's feet and use them as screens, and he possesses almost like an Anton Shlepishlev kind of wrister and snapshot, real hard, real elite, a lot of pace on it and deceptive. So yeah, I think he's found something else that he kind of added to his repertoire, and he plays a physical brand of hockey. He's not shy whatsoever, and he adds a dimension to that bottom six that makes us a tougher team to play against. And over the course of multiple rounds, I think that kind of guy can pay dividends for you.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime you have a bottom six forward who can beat goalies from distance, that's such a valuable asset. And aside from all the other physical elements he brings, but how does Woodcroft find him more ice time? Do you just see him getting elevated in the lineup? Does he just need to roll 4 lines more consistently going forward?
I mean, he's effective right now, playing limited minutes. So yeah, I guess you'd like to find a guy that can contribute like he does a little bit more ice time. I think when you go 11-7 and you have the ability to put him out there with Connor or Leon, he certainly won't hurt you. So I think staying with 11-7 probably gives him the best opportunity to get the most ice time that he's going to see. Might be a little bit streaky, hot and cold, but even when he's cold, I mean, he's finishing checks and he's a force. So trying to up his minutes, probably closer to 10 a night would be a little bit better.
And I think he did get over 10 minutes a couple times in the series, but going back to Game 5, I think he only played like 3 minutes and change. So you'd like to see him probably closer to double digits. And Dash, did you think Kostin would eventually rediscover his scoring touch? And where do you think Woodcroft can find him more minutes in the lineup, or if he even should?
Like I would, I'm not saying I had Klim Kostin on my bingo card for 2 goals in the deciding game, and as many as he scored in the limited time he's played. So it's been a bit of a surprise. How do you get him more time? Yeah, I think it depends whether they can go 11-6 or 11-7 or 12-6. And if the health of Janmark is good, I can't imagine they're keeping him out of the lineup. Therefore, Broberg comes out, in which case now you've got your 12 forwards, you roll 4 lines. But if it's 11-7, they're going to find them opportunities in different ways. And it's, slipping Draisaitl or McDavid down to the 4th line and giving those guys some opportunity then. You can see the limited times they did that with Draisaitl. The Ryan Costin Draisaitl connection hit at least 2 or 3 times that series.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe this is just the right amount of ice time for him to keep him in sort of that 8 to 12 minute range, and because he seems to be very effective in that amount of ice time. But I still think when a guy's rolling like that and he's starting to build some confidence, you'd like to get him out there a little more often. I believe he played 15 shifts in Game 6, so it's like you said, if you can get him out there and have a look with next to Leon or Connor, that can just only do wonders for him, because the guy can really shoot the puck, and when he can have an elite distributor like one of those guys setting him up in the slot, it's just going to increase his likelihood of success. All right, let's go back to Skinner's miscue early in the 3rd period when he unknowingly played the puck with a broken stick, which unfortunately the Kings capitalized on. However, Skinner locked it down from there before Yamamoto ultimately gave the Oilers the lead for good in the final frame. Dash, what can you say about the resiliency the Oilers showed, not just in Game 6, but throughout this series?
I think it starts and ends with Stuart Skinner, to be honest. It wasn't the prettiest of performances over that amount of games, but he showed composure. He was calm, like for a rookie goaltender in an NHL playoff, and to be tying Grant Fuhr's records going in, and that's a lot of pressure, and he's handled it as well as you can. So ultimately, I kind of think it lives and dies through Skinner.
But when you look at this team, they've been a consistent playoff team for 4 years in a row. They finished 2nd place in the division in each of those years. Is it fair to say that the maturity of this group is greater than in past years, even when they were still close to the top of the division over the previous 3 seasons, where when they get down in a game or they let in a backbreaking goal like that they're able to recover and just stay with it?
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt. And I think Ekholm becomes the icing on the cake in those scenarios. But this entire season, the Oilers have showed a more formidable resilience than any other season. I feel like they've had more backbone. They've had more ability to come back. They've had more pushback, showing all the different ways that you can come back in a hockey game and not look, panicked, or not ever be in fear that you've, don't have the firepower to come back and win one of these. I do believe that it starts and begins with Skinner. He's honestly been the biggest difference in our team in the years past versus this season.
And Skinner's this is a rookie goalie we're talking about. I mean, just mature beyond his years in those situations where even after letting in a goal that, could have cost his team, that not just him, but the entire team settles down and just goes right back to work.
Yeah, and that's not taking anything away from Bukestad and Ekholm and the trade deadline acquisitions. I do feel like they've helped settle the ship, and that experience has helped plug us through a couple of games. But for Skinner to go through an experience like that, where it just reeked of Marc-Andre Fleury in the World Junior Championships. Just putting the puck right on the other team's stick in the slot with nobody else around, and boom.
I remember that happened in New Jersey back in November too, where he misplayed a puck and it ended up in his net. And then I think it happened again in Boston in March. So it's not the first time that he's had one of these situations where he's turned over the puck that led to a goal against. But, it's hard to fault the guy too much when he's been so important for this team all season long. And the fact that he was able to just shake it off and get right back in there, I think that's a real positive sign going forward.
Well, then let's not forget that Mike Smith was quite famous for these as well, and maybe not as gregarious as the Marc-Andre Fleury or Skinner of the last, but ultimately, look at how they handle that. Smith goes on to the rest of the game and starts screaming at rookie defensemen and telling people where they should be on the ice. And, Skinner just went, I just might have gave up a pivotal series momentum changing goal that if they don't come back and my team doesn't come back and win this, we might lose the series and everybody will blame me. And he just went, yeah, well, shit happens.
And Dirsa, how impressed were you with the Oilers' resiliency against the Kings in round one, specifically Game 6 after that tough one to give up shorthanded?
I mean, there was adversity throughout the series. The Oilers were a little bit undisciplined in the early games, and they sorted that out. With the Skinner thing, I mean, I was pissed at first. I'm like, why didn't you go the other way? Why are you trying to go against the grain? Well, he said afterwards he was trying to actually rifle it up to Bouchard, but he couldn't rifle it because his gun was broken. Like, that stick severed in half. I mean, that's going to affect your puck moving ability. What surprises me is that he didn't notice earlier. Like, I think somebody's skate probably had a step on it or something. I
think they showed the replay. Kempe slashed it.
Yeah,
and that broke it.
Yeah, so it's surprising that he didn't notice, but I mean, those sticks are so light anyways that it just, whatever. I'm impressed at his ability to put it behind him and that the moment didn't get too big. And he dialed in his game right afterwards and gave him that chance to go and get the goal that put the nail in the coffin, against the Kings. It's funny he broke Grant's record, as a rookie, because there's similarities, not so much in their style of play, but just their demeanor. They were both calm guys, and it's not your fault, it's mine. And the total opposite of Mike Smith when it comes to that, and really like the total opposite in the puck play. Yeah, he goes behind the net, he stops the puck, but he's not looking to make that heroic, play to the far blue line to spring McDavid for a breakaway. That's not what he's doing. He's going to just stop his defenseman from getting pounded, making the simple play, and not trying to make it about him, just doing his job. And Mike Smith was a puck handler, but it was almost like once a month there was a gaffe like what Stewart had in Game 6. It was a regular occurrence, and it hasn't been a regular occurrence for Stu. He's been very good at playing the puck and just more calm, and you know what you're going to get every night.
That said, remember how cool it was when Mike Smith passed the puck up to Connor McDavid for a breakaway
in San Jose? Yeah. I mean, there's benefits to having a fiery competitor like Smith too. He was apparently a locker room leader, which you don't often get from a goaltender. A lot of times they'll keep to themselves and just be sort of focused on stopping the puck. But I don't know. I mean, the WWE style entrance he had coming back from the quiet room into the playoffs against the Flames last year was pretty legendary too. But maybe having the steady hand like Stuart Skinner between the pipes is a good thing as well. And there's obviously, like you said, connections to Grant Fuhr in terms of like both being local guys and the calm demeanor. So yeah, I can only hope that Skinner will have half the success that Grant Fuhr had in his career, starting with a ring this year.
Well said, brother.
I don't think you'll ever get an admission from anybody on the team, but I think, when you have a goalie that starts to harp on the players and especially his defensemen, I think sometimes that leadership that they want to give him all this credit for kind of gets lost in the shuffle because you start to tune it out.
That was not Smith's most shining moment. I believe that happened in February in a game against Tampa where Dash referenced that he was sort of staring down. I think it was Marcus Niemelainen after a Stamkos one time.
And Broberg in the same game.
But then again, I have too much of I don't have. How should I put this? I have a hard time blaming Smith too much because he went on a 9-0 run in April later that season. So obviously he was able to turn it around. But yeah, maybe the handling of young defensemen could have been better. But just overall, I think that Smith, despite some less than shining moments was pretty solid for the Oilers during his 3 years with the team. And just to finish up on round one, I think we have to talk about the outstanding series that Leon Draisaitl had. And even though Game 6 wasn't his most dominant outing in the series, he still scored a power play goal. And with that goal, he became the third fastest player in NHL history to record 70 career playoff points, behind only Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. So it just shows you the class he's in terms of being able to reach that milestone. He also has 43 points in his last 4 playoff series. Dirsa, is Draisaitl right now the best playoff performer in the NHL?
Well, we have 2 games to catch Matthew Tkachuk because he's on a tear too. But I mean, Leon last season, I mean, on one leg, what he was doing, I mean, it's just, to quote Leon, I mean, it's fucking phenomenal. The guy is a truck when it comes to, performing in the playoffs. He just pulls the team along like he's pulling a locomotive. It's crazy what the guy can do. And I think he'll leapfrog Matthew in the next 2 games here. When he's at 8 games instead of 6, the next 2 games he'll put up some points too. So I think he'll surpass Tkachuk. I mean, in this era, I think he is one of the ultimate playoff performers, of this time right now.
For sure. And Dash, where would you rank Draisaitl among the top playoff performers in the league? Not just specifically in what we've seen over the past 2 weeks, but just overall in the league right now.
I'm not going to disrespect anything Draisaitl's done. And you have points per game statistics that second only to the great one.
Yeah, he's second all time in playoff points per game average. Yeah.
99 Forever podcast. So all hail the great one. And ultimately, when you're second to that guy, you're pretty damn good. However, I'll maybe take the controversial side of this one, or the counterpoint, but I can't call anybody the best playoff performer in hockey that doesn't have a Stanley Cup.
That's fair.
So if I'm going to go and start to look at active players in the NHL that are the best playoff performers, my caveat is they may not be in their prime, but I'm not going to take anything away from Drew Doughty or Anze Kopitar, who are some of the guys that have won 3 cups that are still in the league: Kucherov, Stamkos, Vasilevsky. In fact, I'd probably put my vote on Vasilevsky being the best playoff performer in hockey right now.
Yeah, and as a goaltender too.
Well, and his record in, elimination games and game 7s and games when their back was up against the wall. Those are the games that count, and he's got the best record in the NHL in those situations. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's also worth mentioning that with Draisaitl being second all time on that list, McDavid has the 5th highest points per game average in playoff history as well. And last year, 33 points in 16 games, over 2 points per game in the playoffs. He led the playoffs in scoring despite not reaching the final. So just that tells you how impactful he was in the games he played. But it's like you said, how do you rate that compared to someone like Cale Makar, who won the Conn Smythe Trophy? He made it to the final and his team won, but McDavid was the more dominant offensive player and his team lost. So it just kind of goes down to how much do you weigh team success versus individual success in those situations?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, both Draisaitl and McDavid have 43 points in their last 4 series that they've played. Makar has 33 points in his last 5 series that he's played. So, I mean, if we're going to call Makar the second best player, McKinnon, I think they both had 33 or 34 points respectively in their last 5 series. So nobody holds a candle to them as far as players in their peak and their prime and that could take over a game and dominate the playoffs. They are the best playoff performers for those reasons. But if you're going to make me put a ribbon on somebody or hand over a trophy, then I have to stick with the guys that have done it and proven it.
For sure. All right, let's move on to the Oilers' second round series against the Golden Knights. Now, this will be the first ever playoff series between the two clubs. The Oilers went 3-0-1 in the season series against the Golden Knights, including a pair of wins on the road. And these were the top two teams in the Western Conference as well, with Vegas finishing just 2 points ahead of Edmonton to take the Pacific Division crown. When you look at these teams on paper, in what areas do you give the Oilers the clear-cut advantage over the Golden Knights and vice versa? Dash, you can go first.
All categories. I'm, I'll take my rose-colored glasses off and answer that again. Nope, still same answer. All categories. Who is
top six, bottom six, defense, goaltending, power play, penalty kill. There's not one spot that you give the edge to the Golden Knights.
100%. I stand behind it. Brossoit is not a better goaltender than Skinner, nor has he performed better. I believe the defense of Vegas is very good, very formidable. I don't think Alex Martinez or Peter Angelo are in their prime. I'd say potentially our defense our top six is without question untouched. Our bottom six has been what's providing game-winning goals and 5-on-5 scoring. Our power play is 60%. Like, let me just say that again.
Set the NHL record for best. Highest success rate in a playoff series.
Right. So our penalty kill's been doing great. I think we're bigger. I think we're faster. I think we're tougher. I think we've been through more resilience. I think we're a better home team. I think we're a better road team. And in the last 10 games we've played the Knights, we're 8-0-2. Yeah. They haven't beat us in regulation since February 26th of 2020, Eric.
It's incredible.
And
now, there was one year where they didn't play against each other, but I know what you're saying. Still an incredible run.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's 2021 where we had the Canadian League, but ultimately that, it's untouched. It hasn't been close. And if you want to just keep recency bias front and foremost, the last game that they played each other, it was extremely important, I might add, for divisional standings. The Oilers put up a touchdown on the Knights.
I mean, they had 2 games against the Kings and 2 games against the Golden Knights late in the season. And the Oilers won 3 of those 4 games. And the only one they lost was the overtime game at Rogers Place, where they gave up a goal that still came away with a point. But I put out a Twitter poll the other day too, Dash, and I asked fans, which team do you think will be the tougher opponent when we look back on these playoffs in the summer? And I think it was over 80%. Something like 81 to 19% said that they thought the Kings would be the tougher opponent. Do you concur with that?
I do. Depends who they line up in the final, but as far as right now, yeah, I do see it as the Kings. I think just statistically and stylistically, it was a tough matchup for the Oilers, and the Kings proved that by being a tough out.
And Dirsa, when you look at both sides here, everything from special teams to coaching to all positions, do you give Edmonton the across the board, same as Dash, the edge in this series, or do you think that Vegas actually has the advantage in any area?
I gotta totally disagree with Dash and say Vegas has a huge edge in arena entertainment. And that's basically it. I think Skinner,
maybe their Twitter account, they seem to get a lot of love for their social media too. So
I think Skinner is a little bit more of a positional goaltender than Brossoit. I think Brossoit relies on some athleticism more so than positioning. And I think eventually that's going to come to haunt you if you're guessing against this offensive lineup that we have. That's going to bite you. And I think Pietrangelo, however you want to say it, he was in St. Louis, was an elite defenseman. I don't think he's there anymore. I think him and Ekholm are a bit of a saw-off now. And I think Bouchard is elevated his game to a level that makes it tough for opposing goalies to read what he's going to do, whether he's shooting the puck or looking like he's Daniel Sedin back there with the one-touch passes to McDavid. So I think our D is probably just a little bit better than what theirs is. I'm not going to say it's light years ahead because I don't believe that, but Vegas doesn't have the game breakers that we do. I don't think Jack Eichel is anywhere close to Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl.
Are you surprised we haven't heard more of a Eichel versus McDavid matchup? Or do you think that because McDavid's just such a superior player that storyline isn't even going to come into effect?
Yeah, it's not even worth really going there anymore. I mean,
because you think about Crosby and Ovechkin, the NHL built up that rivalry for years with those two teams going at it and meeting in the playoffs and battling it out for scoring titles. And they were more contemporaries, whereas because McDavid is vastly better than Eichel, you don't get that same sort of rivalry feel going into this series, do you?
But it was 10 or 15 years later, they still are statistically identical, Crosby and Ovechkin. Like, McDavid's blowing Eichel out of the water. Does not even deserve to be in the same breath.
Yeah, no. And Sidney and Alex, kind of like that head-to-head matchup and were feisty with each other and kind of made the rivalry work. You don't really see Eichel go after McDavid or vice versa. Not even close to the same. And I think, one game in their head-to-head matchups where Eichel kind of got the better of Connor after the night was over. Like, it's not close.
No. And, even though the Oilers' depth is improved, I thought maybe the one spot that you could maybe point to that Vegas would have the edge would be their bottom six, especially with Mark Stone on the third line. I think they're really trying to divide up the talent throughout the lineup and make some tougher matchups for Edmonton. But doesn't appear to be at 100% right now. And also, you look at how the Oilers' bottom six has been clicking lately. I thought that could just be a saw-off. And looking at the penalty kill, this is an area where I thought Vegas might actually be ahead of Edmonton as well, but they have the second worst penalty kill among playoff teams at 58.3%, whereas Edmonton's power play is running at 56.3%. So our power play is almost clicking at the same level as their PK. So I mean, if Vegas takes penalties in this series, it could be a very short series for them.
Worth noting that Vegas was the least penalized team in the entire NHL this year.
Yeah. And we'll see if the refs decide to call a few more in this series than they let go in the opening round. So due to some scheduling issues in LA last week and waiting for the other series to wrap up, the Oilers have only played one game in the last 7 days. And while I'm sure the extra rest time is welcomed by the players, do you think it's too much time off between games, or does the momentum from winning 3 straight not really carry over to a new series? Dirsa, go ahead.
Vegas has been off playing games longer than Edmonton, so I think that goes to advantage Edmonton.
And Dirsa, do you like all the extra time off that the Oilers have had here, or would you have rather a quicker turnaround for round 2 and just get them out there right away?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with these extra days. I think it will help Evander Kane and if Connor's fighting something.
Same for you, Dash. Is the extra time off a good thing?
Yeah, it's a good thing, especially when it's a saw-off with Vegas, who's also been sitting just as long. I don't think momentum carries from series to series in the playoffs. I don't think it barely carries from game to game.
I do think that, the confidence that comes from getting a few wins in a row is big. But, I've heard lots of people say that over the years, that momentum doesn't carry over from game to game. But if the Oilers are able to jump on them early, I think that will be a really big thing in this series, because they have beat them several times already this year. And, if you can just kind of get in their head that it's going to be a tough one and that McDavid and Draisaitl are going to be running and gunning from the start, that can only increase their odds in the series.
Yeah, I think there's a deflation factor there for sure. If Vegas hasn't beat the Oilers in regulation in their last 10 meetings, then we come out and put another touchdown on them in game 1.
Yeah, and Dash, you actually mentioned this a little earlier in the show, but we'll just touch on it again. Matthias Janmark is reportedly getting closer to returning to action. He was injured blocking a shot in game 1 against the Kings. When Janmark is officially cleared to play, Do you expect Woodcroft to stick with the 11-7 configuration because it's worked so well, or do you think they'll go back to the more traditional 12-6?
I think they stay with 11-7 if it's a winning lineup and Janmark's not ready. I think if Janmark's ready, he's a contributing factor and a contributing member of this team and will immediately get a spot back in the lineup, and they would go 12-6 instead of 11-7. I prefer they stayed 11-7, but I also want to see Janmark in this series. I think there might be some interesting dynamics with him playing his ex-team.
Yeah, exactly. And just because Janmark comes in and probably Broberg comes out, that doesn't mean that they couldn't shake up the line still and get McDavid or Draisaitl out there with the third and fourth line from time to time. But I think it's just easier to do when you go 11-7. Dirsa, what would you do in this situation?
I think you got to look. I mean, you got to take things game at a time, but I also think you have to look at going 11-7. I think all the way to the Stanley Cup final, and trying to seal the deal. I think going 11-7 for that long a haul could start to take a toll on your forward group. Because you're depleting your lineup by one guy, so it's that much more hits, and there can be a cumulative toll that goes on. So, on one hand, you need to win games, and 11-7 seems to work for them that way. But if you can manage to win games going 12-6, I think you need to think about doing that too. Just because it's a grind going all the way to the cup final and trying to win it. But I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. That's left up to Jay. I thought Broberg has played well when he's been out there. I haven't really seen much to criticize in his game at all. He's been kind of the prototypical seventh defenseman where you don't really notice him, and I think that's exactly what you want. So I'd have a hard time pulling him from the lineup because I just don't see, glaring deficiencies in his game that say, yeah, he's got to come out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just to continue on the theme of scoring depth, since trailing 3-0 after the first period of Game 4, 9 different Oilers have contributed for 16 goals. So even though Draisaitl and McDavid had double-digit point totals in the series against the Kings, the Oilers were getting contributions from throughout the lineup. Dirsa, other than Draisaitl and McDavid, who could you see having a big impact in the series against the Golden Knights?
I think it's time that Nuge, entered the playoffs. He's been really quiet, and he still possesses that lethally accurate wrist shot, and I think he'll start to put his stamp on the playoffs here. So I could see him starting to break out.
And Dash, who's your pick for round 2 to kind of step up their game here?
Yeah, Nuge is the easy answer. We haven't seen or heard from Nuge what we saw in the regular season. The power play is obviously still running through his hands and picking up few points that way. I think I'd like to see CC and Nurse as a pairing, potentially pick up their game a little bit. They may, potentially worry me more than anyone else. I like Nurse's game. CC's got me a bit bothered.
Yeah, I mean, CC only scored once this year, and it was in the second game of the season, so it would be great for him to break through and get one. He of course, had the series winning goal against the Kings a year ago, but that would be a good pick. I went with Ryan McLeod for my breakthrough guy in the first round, and he had 3 assists in 6 games, but I would love to see him get a goal in this series. Just to be different, I'll say him, but Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is the one that I would probably tend to agree with you guys on this. 4 assists in 6 games, not bad at all. But after putting up 100 points in the regular season, having the best year of his life, you'd like to see him kind of take that next step and start burying a couple. And I think that he will, because they're not going up against as stingy of a defensive team as the Kings were. So if Vegas wants to get into a track meet with the Oilers and play end to end, it's going to probably go in the Oilers' favor. And just to wrap up the show now, I want to get some predictions from you. So Draisaitl and McDavid tallied 11 and 10 points respectively in 6 games against the Kings. And while they are among the league leaders in scoring, I expect their numbers will still go up from here. I want to know, how many points do you think Draisaitl and McDavid will each have against the Golden Knights? And just the final question for you is, who are you picking to win the series and in how many games? Dash, you go ahead.
I'm going to answer them in reverse order because I think chronologically it makes more sense to do so. I got the Oilers in 5. I think they're going to. I think it's going to be an easier series than the Kings, and I'm pretty confident in that. I think that because of the road team that we've been all year, we can go into Vegas and win the first 2 games. We come out of there up 2-0 and maybe just let our foot off the gas a little bit. Coming home, maybe a little intimidated by the crowd and a bit of pressure, lose game 3, get your shit back together, win game 4, and then once you got your eye on the prize for game 5, it's over. Given it's a short series, I think these guys keep the same clip that they're on. Ultimately, there's probably going to be, anywhere from 1.5 to 2 points per game for each of them. So let's call it 8 points for Draisaitl and 9 for McDavid.
Okay. And Dirsa, what are your predictions for McDavid and Draisaitl as well as the Oilers in this series?
Yeah, I'm going to say Connor gets shot out of a cannon and goes for 15 points, and
wow.
And Leon has a dozen. I think there's going to be lots of goals scored in this series, but I think it's going to be a little bit tougher than what some people are thinking. I think we win in 6. Hopefully it's quicker than that, because I think having rest going into the Western Conference final would be a blessing for these guys. But there's a part of me that's a little bit nervous that, you know that it's going to be a different style of game against Vegas than it was LA. I agree with Dash in the sense that I think it's going to be a little bit easier of a series, but I don't think it shortens the amount of games. I just think some of the games get pretty lopsided, but I don't think puck luck is always going to be on our side throughout this series like it wasn't in the first series against LA. Really, it took till later on in the series before we started to seem like we got any bounces. I think in this series it's a little bit more even that way, but I think Vegas finds a way to win 2 games and it goes 6.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I'm going Oilers in 6 as well. And just doing some quick math on the fly here, 15 points in 6 games would be 2.5 points per game. So if you're saying McDavid's going to be shot out of a cannon, that sounds a lot like it. I'm going to go with 13 points. I'll say 13 for McDavid, 12 for Draisaitl, which are still, both over 2 points per game. Like I said, Oilers in 6. I'm hoping that, as we've seen over the last 5 years, Oilers fans will fill that building. I'm sure that there are already a ton of people in Edmonton who have booked their tickets, their plane tickets and hotels to get down there for game 1 and 2, even with the game 2 night changing now. Yeah. Kind of weird at the last minute that they've done that, switching it to Saturday, but I guess they figure. At first, I thought it was mainly due to get the Oilers on Hockey Night in Canada on a Saturday night, but I think it probably has more to do with trying to up the hotel rates in Vegas. But yeah, so it should be a great series coming up here. I'm excited to get going tomorrow night, and just want to thank you guys again for being on the show. I know you had double duty tonight, being on 2 podcasts. So I appreciate you taking another hour to talk here after you just basically did the same thing with Michael earlier.
He promised he'd pay us double.
Yeah. Well, I mean, getting you guys on for the 2 for the price of 1 would be worth it, I'd say.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man.
Been a pleasure.
So where can people follow you before we sign off?
Go ahead, Dirce.
Yeah, I'm on the old Twitterverse at Mike Dirsa. Proud member of Heavy Hockey. We do our podcasts straight off the pipe on YouTube and Facebook and Heavy Hockey's Twitter. And yeah, we write some articles for heavyhockey.com and hang out whenever we can.
And Dash, where can people find you?
Not far away from Dirsa, unfortunately, but at Dash in the Park on Twitter, Dash in the Park on Facebook, heavyhockey.com, Straight Off the Pipe on YouTube, Heavy Hockey on YouTube, and if you go to check either one of those out, we would absolutely love a subscription. It does mean a lot to us. It goes a long way. So tune into those places, and it's pretty tough to not hear my voice.
Absolutely. So everyone, please go give those guys a follow and subscribe to their YouTube channel. Hey, we made it through an entire show without a fight.
It's not over yet.
I'm also surprised that Dash made it through a full episode without bragging once about shutting me down in the Heavy Hockey Showdown.
You can't brag when you lose the game. So you guys, you enjoy your trophy for the year and reading Adam's name up on your mantle, Dirce, and we'll see you again next year.
I still think that there was a missed call by Brett there on Jeff Aid holding me in front of the net. And there's even a picture I think that Kirk took of it. So I'm gonna have to take that up with Brett the next time I have him on the show.
I would do that. Yep.
Yeah, game manager always. All right, guys, have a good night, and let's get a win tomorrow.
Let's go Oilers.
We got this.
All right. So for Dirsa and Dash, I'm Eric Friesen. This has been the 99 Forever podcast. We're out.
It's time to get to work.